The date is March 27th, 1988. The electric atmosphere of Trump Plaza in Atlantic City crackles with anticipation as two titans of professional wrestling prepare to collide before 19,000 ardent fans. In one corner stands the $1 Million Man, dripping with arrogance and ill-gotten wealth. In the other, a figure whose very presence commands attention, with his trademark raspy voice, his signature sunglasses gleaming under the arena lights. Here is the Macho Man, Randy Savage. This is much more than just another match at WrestleMania 4. It is the culmination of a tournament to crown a new Federation World Heavyweight Champion, and Savage is about to ascend to wrestling immortality. At his side stands Miss Elizabeth, the epitome of grace amid the chaos of professional wrestling, her presence lending an air of sophistication to Savage's controlled fury. The image of Savage hoisting Elizabeth onto his shoulder after securing victory will become iconic, a perfect snapshot of wrestling's golden age, capturing both its theatricality and its underlying humanity. Yet beneath the glitter and glory of that triumphant moment lay the seeds of a darker tale. Both Savage and Elizabeth would leave this world far too soon, he at 58, she at just 42. Their stories, intertwined in both triumph and tragedy, raise questions that still haunt wrestling fans today. What price does one pay for greatness? What demons lurk behind the pyrotechnics of pageantry? To understand the man who became macho, we must first meet Randy Mario Poffo. Born on November 15, 1952, in Columbus, Ohio. Wrestling wasn't just a career choice for Randy, it was the family business. His father, Angelo Poffo, was a well-known wrestler in his own right, and young Randy grew up watching his father battle in smoke-filled arenas across the Midwest. But Randy's first love wasn't the squared circle, it was baseball. Signed by the St. Louis Cardinals as a catcher straight out of high school, Randy quickly found himself adapting to life in the minor leagues, primarily as an outfielder in the Cardinals and Reds farm systems. At just 18, he shared a locker room with future Major League player Larry Herndon, who later adopted Savage's unorthodox training method of strengthening his swing by pounding a hanging car tire. A devastating shoulder injury forced Poffo to relearn throwing with his left arm, a testament to his relentless determination. After 4 seasons and 289 games, he had compiled a .254 batting average, 16 home runs, and 129 runs batted in. But when baseball didn't pan out, Randy turned to his birthright. During the baseball offseason of 1973, Savage took his first steps into professional wrestling, debuting under the masked persona of the Spider, a nod to the legendary comic book hero. But it wasn't long before his raw intensity demanded a name that matched his ferocity. At the urging of his friend and trainer, Terry the Goose Stevens, and Booker Ole Anderson, who remarked that he wrestled like a savage, Randy Poffo was reborn as Randy Savage, a moniker that would eventually become synonymous with electrifying charisma and unrelenting intensity. Savage made his in-ring debut against Midwest Territory veteran Golden Boy Paul Christie. Teaming with his father and brother, he carved his path through the various wrestling circuits, honing his craft in the unforgiving world of regional wrestling. Frustrated by the lack of pushes for his sons, Angelo Poffo took matters into his own hands, launching the Renegade International Championship Wrestling promotion across the mid-American states. Defiant and unaligned with the wrestling establishment, the promotion waged war against the territory system until its eventual collapse. With their promotion in ruins, Randy and Lanny had no choice but to cross enemy lines, entering the Memphis scene and joining forces with Jerry Lawler's Continental Wrestling Association. In Memphis, Savage ignited a heated rivalry with Lawler over the coveted Southern Heavyweight Championship. Alongside his brother Lanny, he also waged war against the Rock and Roll Express, a battle that reached its boiling point on June 25, 1984. That night, in a moment etched into wrestling infamy, Savage brutalized Ricky Morton, delivering a vicious pile driver through the timekeeper's table. By late 1984, Savage shocked the Memphis wrestling scene by turning babyface, forging an uneasy alliance with Lawler to battle Jimmy Hart's ruthless First Family. But true to his unpredictable nature, Savage betrayed Lawler once again in early 1985, reigniting their fierce rivalry over the championship. Their war reached its climax when Lawler finally vanquished Savage in a high-stakes loser-leaves-town match, forcing the Macho Man to bid farewell to the territory. Subsequently, in June of 1985, Vince McMahon secured one of wrestling's most electrifying talents, signing Randy Savage to the World Wrestling Federation. Making his debut on Championship Wrestling on July 6th, he swiftly dismantled Aldo Marino, a statement victory that marked the arrival of a future icon. Branded as the top free agent in professional wrestling, Savage became the hottest commodity in the sport, with legendary managers including Bobby the Brain Heenan, Jimmy Hart, Mr. Fuji, Johnny Valiant, and classy Freddie Blassie all vying to guide his career. After rejecting their advances, Savage introduced Miss Elizabeth as his manager, a striking contrast to his own unhinged intensity. Portraying a volatile, egomaniacal bully, Savage exuded dominance both in and out of the ring, treating Elizabeth with unsettling possessiveness while daring anyone to even glance in her direction. This explosive dynamic not only made him one of the most compelling villains in wrestling, but also laid the foundation for one of the most iconic partnerships in the history of sports entertainment. Savage's pay-per-view debut came on November 7th at the Wrestling Classic, where he tore through the competition in a grueling 16-man tournament. Showcasing his unmatched athleticism and cunning, he defeated Ivan Putski, outlasted the legendary Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and overcame the relentless Dynamite Kid. But in the finals, victory slipped through his grasp as he fell to Junkyard Dog via countout. By late 1985, Savage set his sights on the prestigious Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship, targeting reigning champion Tito Santana in a heated rivalry. On an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event, he came agonizingly close to claiming the gold, outmaneuvering Santana and securing a countout victory. But the triumph was hollow, as the championship remained with Santana, as titles could not change hands under such circumstances. But in their highly anticipated rematch at the Boston Garden, Savage at last seized the Intercontinental belt through sheer cunning. Concealing a foreign object within his tights, he struck with precision, rendering Santana unconscious and securing the victory in a display of calculated deception. In the early chapters of his Federation tenure, Savage also notched 3 countout victories over none other than World Heavyweight Champion Hulk Hogan, 1 at the Philadelphia Spectrum and 2 within the hallowed halls of Madison Square Garden. Though the championship remained in Hogan's grasp due to the countout rulings, these battles foreshadowed their future alliance. Simultaneously, Savage waged fierce rivalries against the legendary Bruno Sammartino and the unpredictable George the Animal Steele. Savage's bitter vendetta with Steele ignited on Saturday Night's Main Event, when the wild and unhinged Steele became infatuated with Miss Elizabeth, much to Savage's jealous fury. Their clash reached its first crescendo at WrestleMania 2, where Savage defended his Intercontinental Championship against Steele's unpredictable offense. The feud resumed in early 1987, culminating in 2 more championship battles, both of which saw Savage outmaneuver his unorthodox adversary. Next, Savage engaged in what many consider one of the greatest feuds in wrestling history with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Their bout at the 3rd installment of WrestleMania in front of 90,000 fans remains a masterpiece of in-ring psychology and technical excellence. After a relentless exchange that saw 19 near falls, Steamboat, assisted by George Steele, who sent Savage crashing from the top rope, secured the pinfall victory, bringing an end to Savage's nearly 14-month reign as Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion. The bout is still studied by wrestlers today as a perfect example of how to tell a story through athletic competition. Unlike the improvised call-it-in-the-ring style typical of the era, this match was meticulously choreographed. Every sequence, every movement rehearsed to impeccability. Savage, a perfectionist to his core, worked tirelessly with Steamboat to devise what would earn Match of the Year honors from both Pro Wrestling Illustrated and The Wrestling Observer. In September 1987, Savage emerged the victor of the King of the Ring tournament. His undeniable charisma and electrifying performances had begun to sway the crowd, and despite his heel status, the cheers grew louder. Sensing the shift, he softened his antagonism toward both the fans and Miss Elizabeth, signaling a transformation. When the honky-tonk man arrogantly proclaimed himself the greatest Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion of all time, Savage took offense, sparking a nasty rivalry to reclaim the title. On an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event, Savage finally got his shot at the honky-tonk man and the Intercontinental belt. However, just as victory seemed within reach, the Hart Foundation intervened, causing a disqualification. What followed was a ruthless assault on Savage, leaving him outnumbered and vulnerable. But in a moment that would change wrestling history, Miss Elizabeth rushed backstage and returned with Hulk Hogan, who stormed the ring to even the odds. This dramatic rescue marked the birth of the Mega Powers. The next month, at the inaugural Survivor Series, Savage led a powerhouse team into battle against the Honky Tonk Man and his allies, determined to settle the score. Savage's team emerged victorious, but his war with Honky was far from over. Their rivalry stretched into early 1988, culminating in a final high-profile clash on the main event. In their last major showdown, Savage sent a message loud and clear, shoving Honky away from Elizabeth and into the unforgiving ring post, securing a count-out victory and putting an emphatic end to their bitter feud. As highlighted earlier, at WrestleMania 4, Savage entered the grueling 14-man tournament to crown a new World Heavyweight Champion. He fought his way through a gauntlet of tough contenders, defeating Butch Reed, Greg the Hammer Valentine, and the monstrous one-man gang to reach the finals. There, he faced off against the $1 Million Man, who had the towering Andre the Giant in his corner. But when the odds seemed stacked against him, Hulk Hogan intervened, helping Savage score the pinfall to claim his first Federation World Heavyweight Championship. For over a year, Savage stood atop the wrestling world, defending his title against formidable challengers like One Man Gang, Big Boss Man, and even Andre the Giant, cementing his reign as one of the most dominant champions of his era. The Mega Powers then began their first major rivalry against the Mega Bucks, the formidable duo of the $1 Million Man and Andre the Giant. Their clash headlined the historic first-ever SummerSlam on August 29, 1988, with the legendary Jesse the Body Ventura officiating. The match's defining moment came in its final minutes, when Miss Elizabeth shocked the crowd by stepping onto the apron and dramatically removing her skirt, revealing red panties beneath. The distraction was enough to turn the tide, allowing Savage and Hogan, who had been sent to the outside, to re-enter the ring. Seizing the opportunity, Savage forced a hesitant Ventura into making the decisive 3 count, sealing the victory and solidifying the Mega Powers' dominance on one of wrestling's biggest stages. The Mega Powers soon found themselves locked in battle with the Twin Towers, the monstrous alliance of Big Boss Man and Akeem. As tensions escalated, Savage and Hogan frequently intervened in each other's matches, ensuring neither faced the towering duo alone. Their war reached a boiling point in November of 1988 at Survivor Series, where both factions captained opposing teams in a high-stakes main event. In a war of power and strategy, the Mega Powers overcame the odds, emerging victorious and further establishing themselves as the most dominant force in the Federation. But beneath the surface, cracks in their alliance were beginning to form, foreshadowing a seismic shift that would change everything. By early 1989, tension between Savage and Hogan began to simmer, fueled by Hogan's growing closeness to Miss Elizabeth, who had now taken on managerial duties for both men. The cracks widened at the Royal Rumble when a moment of miscommunication turned into a full-blown confrontation. In the heat of the match, Hogan accidentally eliminated Savage, triggering a furious standoff between the two. The tension was palpable as emotions flared, and it took Miss Elizabeth herself stepping between them to prevent an all-out brawl. The breaking point for the Mega Powers came in February when Savage and Hogan took on the Twin Towers. In a fateful incident at ringside, Miss Elizabeth was accidentally injured, and Hogan, in a moment of instinct, carried her to the back for medical attention, leaving Savage alone in the ring. When Hogan returned, he found a man transformed by fury. Savage, seething with jealousy and betrayal, abandoned Hogan mid-match, letting his emotions take control. Backstage, their partnership exploded into a heated confrontation, with Savage accusing Hogan of trying to steal Elizabeth and declaring himself the superior wrestler. Then, in a shocking act of rage, Savage attacked his longtime ally, even turning his fury on Brutus the Barber Beefcake when he tried to intervene. Security had to separate them, but the message was clear. Savage had officially turned heel, shattering the Mega Powers once and for all. At WrestleMania 5, Savage relinquished the World Heavyweight Championship to Hogan after a 371-day reign. In a display of grit, Savage, despite being hospitalized with a severe elbow infection, discharged himself to honor the match. His arm wrapped in a heavy bandage and weakened by the infection, Savage still managed to deliver a rousing performance. Later that month, following the fallout with Miss Elizabeth, who remained by Hogan's side, Savage enlisted the help of former women's champion Sensational Sherri as his new manager. At SummerSlam, Savage co-headlined the event, teaming with the human wrecking machine Zeus, portrayed by actor Tiny Lister in his role from No Holds Barred, to face the megamaniacs of Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake. Despite Savage's cunning, the megamaniacs triumphed after Hogan struck Zeus with Sherri's loaded purse. The two rivals collided once more at No Holds Barred in a steel cage rematch. But once again, Savage and Zeus were vanquished. Amidst the chaos, Savage set his sights on New Gold, challenging Jim Duggan for the King of the Ring title. Emerging victorious, he rebranded himself as the Macho King, embracing his new royal persona with grandiosity. By his side, Sensational Sherri adopted the moniker Queen Sherri. Savage and Hogan clashed one final time in early 1990 at the main event, with Hogan's championship once again at stake. In a controversial finish, newly crowned heavyweight boxing champion Buster Douglas, serving as the special enforcer, counted the pinfall despite Savage kicking out at 2. Outraged, Savage confronted Douglas, slapping the boxing champion in defiance, only to be met with a thunderous blow in retaliation. Savage soon found himself embroiled in a rivalry with the charismatic common man, Dusty Rhodes. At WrestleMania 6, he and Sensational Sherri suffered an embarrassing defeat in a mixed tag match against Rhodes and Sapphire. However, the Macho King evened the score at SummerSlam, securing a hard-fought singles victory over Rhodes and proving that his royal reign was far from over. Next, Savage set his sights on the new Federation champion, the Ultimate Warrior, who had dethroned Hogan at WrestleMania 6. However, Warrior repeatedly denied the Macho King a title shot, opting instead to defend the championship against Sergeant Slaughter at the Royal Rumble in January 1991. Enraged, Savage ambushed Warrior during his entrance and later struck the decisive blow, shattering his royal scepter over Warrior's skull, rendering him unconscious and costing him the championship. In retaliation, Warrior issued a bold challenge, a career-ending match at WrestleMania 7, where the loser would be forced into retirement. In a grueling battle, Savage fell short, and as he lay broken in the ring, Sensational Sherri, seeing no further use for him, ruthlessly attacked him. But from the crowd emerged Miss Elizabeth, who, unable to watch any longer, rushed to the ring, drove Sherri away, and embraced Savage in an emotional reunion. And for the first time since 1989, the Macho Man once again became a beloved fan favorite. Despite his in-ring retirement, Savage remained with the Federation in a non-wrestling role, while the Ultimate Warrior was unceremoniously fired by Vince McMahon after SummerSlam later that year. However, Savage quietly continued to wrestle on select occasions, with the Federation's official story claiming that Warrior had graciously allowed him to finish out the remainder of his contract before stepping away. His final match took place on April 1st in Kobe, Japan, where he fell to Genichiro Tenryu at a Super World Sports event. Yet, retirement proved fleeting. On July 30th, in an untelevised bout at a Wrestling Challenge taping in Portland, Maine, Savage made a surprise return, stepping in for Warrior to defeat The Undertaker. He continued to fill in for Warrior throughout early August, facing Undertaker on the house show circuit. Savage's story with Miss Elizabeth reached its emotional peak when he proposed to her in the ring, leading to their highly publicized on-air wedding at SummerSlam on August 26, 1991, billed as the match made in heaven. In actuality, Savage and Elizabeth had been married since December 1984, and the two would soon divorce the next year in 1992. However, as Savage embraced his new on-screen chapter, a sinister force emerged in the form of Jake the Snake Roberts, now fully embracing his dark side. At the SummerSlam wedding reception, Roberts and his new ally, The Undertaker, crashed the celebration in sinister fashion, hiding a live snake inside a wedding gift. As Elizabeth recoiled in terror upon opening the box, Undertaker struck Savage with the urn while Roberts menaced her with the serpent. Sid Justice intervened, driving them off, but the damage was done. Unable to wrestle due to his WrestleMania 7 retirement, Savage launched a relentless campaign for reinstatement, only to be stonewalled by Federation President Jack Tunney. Then, at a Superstars taping, Roberts escalated the feud, luring Savage into the ring before tying him in the ropes and unleashing his King Cobra, which sank its fangs into Savage's arm. With overwhelming support from the fans, Jack Tunney ultimately reinstated Savage, setting the stage for a showdown with Roberts at this Tuesday in Texas. Savage secured the victory, but the celebration was short-lived, as Roberts viciously delivered 3 post-match DDTs before crossing the ultimate line of slapping Miss Elizabeth. The rivalry raged through the winter, culminating in a decisive clash on an episode of Saturday night's main event, where Savage finally put Roberts down for good. Next, Savage found himself in a contentious rivalry with Federation champion Ric Flair, who brazenly claimed to have had a past relationship with Miss Elizabeth, even producing alleged photos as proof. The tension exploded into a title match at WrestleMania 8, where Savage triumphed, capturing his second championship. Behind the scenes, however, his real-life marriage to Elizabeth was unraveling. Their real-life divorce was finalized in September of 1992, with the Federation even issuing a rare public statement acknowledging the split, which was an unusual break from kayfabe at the time. For much of 1992, Savage and his longtime rival, The Ultimate Warrior, who had returned at WrestleMania 8, managed to coexist without conflict. But when Warrior was named the #1 contender for Savage's championship, old tensions reignited, leading to a series of fiery exchanges. Their clash at SummerSlam was originally scripted to see Warrior align with Mr. Perfect, turning heel to win the title and extend the feud with a now babyface Savage. Yet Warrior refused the turn, fearing a collapse in merchandise sales, forcing last-minute changes. Instead, Savage retained the championship via countout after interference from Ric Flair, and Mr. Perfect left him with a damaged knee. Warrior, rather than exploiting the injury, helped a battered Savage to the back in a moment of uneasy sportsmanship. Just weeks later, on a September episode of Primetime Wrestling, Savage lost the championship to Flair after further interference, this time from the rising force of Razor Ramon. Following his title loss, Savage joined forces with Warrior to form the Ultimate Maniacs, backing his partner in a quest to dethrone Flair. On an episode of Saturday night's main event, they challenged Money Inc. for the Tag Team Championship, winning by countout but failing to capture the gold. Originally set to battle Flair and Razor Ramon at Survivor Series, their plans unraveled when Warrior was fired just weeks before the event. In a dramatic twist, Savage recruited Mr. Perfect, Flair's own executive consultant, as his new partner. Though Perfect initially scoffed at the idea, Bobby Heenan's taunts about his fading abilities pushed him to accept. At Survivor Series, the unlikely duo triumphed, defeating Flair and Ramon by disqualification. As Monday Night Raw debuted in January 1993, Savage transitioned into a color commentary role, while still making occasional in-ring appearances. On January 24th, he nearly won the Royal Rumble, finishing as the runner-up to Yokozuna. Later that year, he returned at Survivor Series on November 24th as a last-minute replacement for Mr. Perfect. In early 1994, his feud with Crush escalated after being eliminated by him in the Royal Rumble, culminating in a Falls Count Anywhere victory at WrestleMania 10 on March 20th. His final Federation match took place on September 13th, 1994 in Germany, where he teamed with Bret Hart to defeat Owen Hart and Jim Neidhart. By the end of October, his Federation contract expired, paving the way for his move to World Championship Wrestling, where he debuted in December 1994, hinting at his complex history with Hulk Hogan, before ultimately aligning with him at Starrcade. He feuded with Ric Flair after Flair attacked his father, leading to a series of intense matches, including losses at the Great American Bash and a win at Bash at the Beach. Later, Savage rejected Flair's offer to team up and instead joined Hogan, Sting, and Luger to defeat the Dungeon of Doom at Fall Brawl, before beating Luger at Halloween Havoc. Savage won his first World Heavyweight Championship at World War III in November of 1995, but lost it to Ric Flair at Starrcade. He regained the title on Nitro, only to lose it again at Super Brawl 6 after Elizabeth betrayed him, siding with Flair. After briefly teaming with Hogan, Savage became a prime target of the newly formed New World Order when Hogan turned on him at Bash at the Beach. He feuded with the faction, culminating in a title loss to Hogan at Halloween Havoc, after which he left the promotion due to contract disputes. Savage returned in January of 1997, claiming he'd been blackballed before aligning with Sting as a free agent. At Super Brawl 7, he betrayed Sting and joined the New World Order, reuniting with Elizabeth and launching a brutal feud with Diamond Dallas Page. After multiple battles, including a Halloween Havoc victory, Savage lost to Lex Luger at Sold Out and again at Super Brawl 8. He then turned on Hogan, won the title from Sting at Spring Stampede with Kevin Nash's help, but lost it to Hogan the next night after Bret Hart's interference. This led Savage to form the Wolfpack with Nash, but knee injuries sidelined him after the Great American Bash. Savage returned in April 1999 with a new look, theme music, and a villainous edge, debuting Gorgeous George as his valet. As the special referee at Spring Stampede, he helped Dallas Page win the title, but later pursued it himself after Kevin Nash's victory at Slamboree. With Sid Vicious's help, Savage won his fourth and final championship at Bash at the Beach, only to lose it to Hogan the next night on Nitro after Nash's interference. Team Madness soon fell apart, leading to a feud with Dennis Rodman, whom Savage defeated at Road Wild. After briefly resurfacing in Nitro to discuss passing the torch, he made his final WCW appearance on Thunder, siding with the Millionaires Club against the New Blood. Then on November 7, 2004, Savage made a surprise return to wrestling at TNA Victory Road, confronting Jeff Jarrett and later leading an attack against the Kings of Wrestling. His final match took place at Turning Point, where he teamed with Jeff Hardy and AJ Styles to defeat Jarrett, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall. By now, Savage had been wrestling on a per-date handshake deal rather than a contract. Agent Bill Behrens characterized Randy Savage as a challenging personality, often under the influence and part of a group of troubled wrestlers who gathered at a trailer to drink away their time. According to Behrens, Savage's final wrestling run was marred by dysfunction and disarray, signaling a bitter end to his legendary career in the industry. Needless to say, outside the ring, Savage was equally memorable. His interviews were stream-of-consciousness masterpieces, delivered with an intensity that made every word seem vital, and his gravelly voice was instantly recognizable to millions. He even translated his wrestling fame into mainstream success, becoming the spokesman for Slim Jim with his memorable Snap into a Slim Jim commercials. In the mid to late 90s, Savage made numerous television appearances, including a wrestling-themed episode of Baywatch, and guest roles on Walker, Texas Ranger, and Mad About You. His film career began with Ready to Rumble, but his most iconic role came in Spider-Man as Bonesaw McGraw. Savage also ventured into music, releasing his rap album Be a Man in 2003. Perhaps even more noteworthy was his commitment to philanthropy, especially his efforts to support underprivileged children. Savage's relationship with Miss Elizabeth, though tumultuous, remained a defining chapter in his life, and their divorce in 1992 marked the end of an iconic era. Their legacy as wrestling's first power couple would live on, but the heartbreaking loss of Elizabeth in 2003 left a lasting void. In March 2010, Savage also mourned the passing of his father, Angelo, whom he had always regarded as his hero and mentor. Just 2 months later, Savage remarried Barbara Lynn Payne, rekindling a love from the early 1970s, but little did he know that fate had darker turns ahead. On the morning of May the 20th, 2011, Savage suffered a fatal heart attack while driving near his home in Seminole, Florida, causing his Jeep Wrangler to crash into a tree. Paramedics found him dead at the scene at age 58, while his wife, who was in the passenger seat, sustained only minor injuries. An autopsy revealed severe coronary artery disease and an enlarged heart, though Savage had never been diagnosed or treated for heart issues. His death was officially attributed to atherosclerotic heart disease. Savage's influence on professional wrestling cannot be overstated. He showed that technical skill and character work could coexist, that intensity didn't have to come at the expense of athleticism. Modern wrestlers still cite him as an influence, and his matches continue to serve as templates for storytelling in the ring. The WWE Hall of Fame finally welcomed him posthumously in 2015, a long overdue recognition of his contributions to the industry. The legacy of the Macho Man extends beyond championships and memorable matches. He represented a perfect storm of athletic ability, character work, and timing, emerging during wrestling's most explosive period of mainstream popularity and helping to define it. His story reminds us that sometimes the brightest stars burn the fastest, but their light continues to illuminate the path for those who follow. From that transcendent moment at Trump Plaza in 1988 to his untimely death in 2011, Randy Savage lived his gimmick with an intensity few could match. He was more than just a wrestler. He was a force of nature who changed the landscape of professional wrestling forever. In an industry built on larger-than-life characters, few loomed larger than the Macho Man. One of the few wrestlers who had a similar, if not greater, impact towards wrestling's golden era is none other than Savage's former tag team partner, Hulk Hogan. Yet, in the wake of a decade marred by controversy, the question remains, has Hulk Hogan destroyed his own legacy? This is the very subject we explore in our next video. To watch it, simply click the thumbnail appearing on your screen right now, and I'll meet you there momentarily. Thank you for watching.